everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. I am here with some of my favorite people, the women of Boys Club, which is a fun thing to say, Dina and Natasha, and they're going to do this weekly recap episode with me. We're going to talk through everything that's going on in the land of NFTs, the metaverse, etc. And thank you both so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having us.
So happy to be here. This is going to be so fun.
So we're going to get into a lot of good stuff. You know, we have luxury brands entering the metaverse, you could say. Tiffany's Punks announced a big collaboration. We've got Gucci accepting ApeCoin, some big things in the world of music that I want to talk through, some like actually pretty significant changes that have been made that people probably aren't aware of that I want to talk about. Treeverse is a cool project I'm tracking these days. But before we get into all of that, we do have to hear a word from our lovely, lovely sponsors.
Immutable X is the layer 2 platform for crypto gaming. Immutable offers massive scalability with up to 9,000 transactions per second and instant transaction confirmation. No more gas fees, no more waiting around for your transaction to clear. Immutable's zero knowledge rollup finally unlocks the world of crypto gaming. Immutable X is the only gas-free NFT minting platform with over 26 million NFTs minted, all with zero gas fees. With the power of Immutable, gaming developers don't also need to become smart contract developers. They just need to plug in to Immutable's API and instantly start unlocking the full potential of crypto assets inside of games. This is why world-class companies and projects have decided to deploy on Immutable X, like GameStop, Ember Sword, Planet Quest, Illuvium, TikTok, and many more behind the scenes. So start building your game on Immutable X today at immutable.com. There is a brand new staking feature in the Ledger Live app today. We all like staking the assets that we're bullish on, and now you can stake 7 different coins inside the Ledger Live app. Cosmos, Polkadot, Tron, Algorand, Tezos, Solana, and of course, Ethereum. With Ledger Live, you can take money from your bank account, buy your most bullish crypto asset, and stake that asset to its network, all inside the Ledger Live app. Through a partnership with Figment, Ledger also lets you choose which validator you want to stake your assets with. And Ledger is running its own validating nodes, offering a convenient way to participate in network validation, and it even comes with slashing insurance. Ledger Live is truly becoming the battle station for the bankless world, so go download Ledger Live. If you have a Ledger already, you probably already have it, and get started securely staking your crypto assets.
Okay, maybe let's just start. I usually start these just kind of on the macro of like what's happening in the space kind of writ large. I don't know. Y'all both have like day jobs. So you're fun because you're the badasses who like have a day job and then basically full-time like degen and build your crypto business on the side. Maybe like tell folks a little bit about Boys Club just for anybody who doesn't know.
Go for it, Natasha.
Okay, great. Boys Club is a social DAO. We are building a whole world of things in Web3 with centering women and non-binary individuals' voices. And we have a media empire. We have a DAO with lots of different guilds going on and building products, launching NFTs, doing all sorts of stuff. So that's what Dina and I do by night. And then we both have day jobs during the day. So it's a lot of fun and it's pretty busy.
You may also know us from our parties. So Boys Club throws pretty epic parties.
Epic parties.
That's pretty core to it.
That's where we started. And that's sort of the funnest part of what we do. I work in crypto during the day as well. So I'm degen by night and degen by day. So
there's certain topics that are off limits to us because
I
of
will be skirting some topics today.
some recent hacks that may have occurred. Yeah, Boys Club events are fantastic. That's where I first met you both, and just such a like wonderful attention to detail from your brand and from Boys Club. Like the drinks, like the cocktails at the party will have like really fun names, and there's always like Vitalik, like temporary tattoos to be applied to the body. They're just like really, really fun stuff. So a big fan in that sense. Well, the NFT market, I mean, hey, the crypto market seems to continue to hold strong, and NFTs in general down a little bit, but nothing crazy here to report. Blue chips still making big moves. We'll get right into the CryptoPunks Tiffany's situation, but is there anything in particular y'all have been tracking this week in the market?
I thought there was a lot of FUD this week with. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the hacks, but there was a lot of events. There wasn't just one isolated incident, and it felt like a turbulent week to me from a security perspective. And then that seeps into news in interesting ways. I know we're going to talk about that in a bit, but it felt pretty turbulent. But that sort of juxtaposed with some of these news stories that we're going to be talking about today, like there's also a ton of optimism and I think a ton of movement.
I feel like I have this very extreme point of view on it where like when this crash period like sort of first happened, I was just like waiting for everything to go to zero. And every week that things just like clearly don't go to zero, I'm like pleasantly surprised. I'm like, things are okay. I'm like, okay, apparently we're all just like still here. And these blue chip, NFTs are relatively holding their value. And like, I guess we're all kicking. Like we've just, this is here to stay. So I'm excited I made this bet. But certainly the hacks, I think, seep into people's minds. There were some funny memes about like, not that we want to make light of it, but of like the phantom wallet hack. I saw somebody being like, doing a joke video where he was like running over to like check his Solana wallet and being, oh, it's still there. And it's like, he's like $12 of Sol in the wallet. It was like every like phantom user right now. It was like, oh no, like Logan was like, oh, okay, it's still there. It was like 12.20. He had like 3 Sol. I was like, that's kind of me. Like I have a phantom wallet, but I don't have enough in there to really be particularly perturbed.
Yeah.
So again, not trying to make light of people who really did
Totally.
feel the losses here, but it is kind of funny. Okay, let's talk about this Punks Tiffany's collaboration. Do you want me to give the overview here? Natasha, Dina, do one of you want to walk us through what the announcement was?
You go for it.
Yeah.
I definitely we have a lot of hot takes, but yeah, you tell us the world of it.
Okay, so on July 31st, I guess, is when Tiffany first made this announcement. They're saying that the future is here and it's called NFTiff. And they said it was going to be 30
Questionable
ETH.
name. Just going to start out
I don't-
right now. And
I do
say
not
I don't love the name, but we can keep going.
They're trying to be cute.
Yes, they are.
I mean, NFTiff. What's your any specifics on why you hate it, or it's just like
it's just like so kitsch.
wrong?
Like, what are we doing? And like Tiffany's like a premium brand. You want to feel like you have like a premium experience when you're buying something from Tiffany's. And like to have a pun is not it for me.
Yeah, you've persuaded me. I totally agree. I hadn't really paid attention to that. But you are like, again, Boys Club's branding is fantastic. And you both are very good at branding. So they should be taking your advice on this.
I think Natasha's right. Like a little bit of like an elevated approach to sort of how the whole thing was packaged. I mean, the videos look great and stuff. But I think the name
NFTiff as a name
me the wrong way.
Is cringy. Well, and then that same day they clearly announced they're going to get into NFTs in some capacity, though it's worth mentioning that Tiffany's has been involved before. They did a Tom Sachs rocket at one point. So they had partnered with Tom Sachs to do his rocket piece. So this is not their very first foray into this, but they then announced, okay, we're taking NFTs to the next level, and that they're for CryptoPunk holders exclusively, they're offering this option for you to get your punk on a pendant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only going to be 250 of these. So it's like a first come, first serve thing. It's actually launching tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday. It'll launch. This CryptoPunk Tiffany collaboration will launch on Friday. So when this airs, 250 of them, 30 ETH. And what was so interesting to me about this, and then I want to get your thoughts on it, was shortly after this, Yuga Labs, or CryptoPunks, I should say, but that's sort of Yuga Labs now, put out the statement saying this is not like a formal partnership.
Yeah.
So while Yuga is not directly involved in the collaboration between Tiffany and Co., it's a great example of the types of things punk holders will be able to do with the IP licensing agreement, which we intend to release on August 15th. So when Yuga Labs purchased CryptoPunks back in February, I guess, or whatever it was, March, they had said, we're going to give the rights to the CryptoPunk holders, just like Bored Ape holders have. But they haven't actually rolled out what that license is going to look like. They're saying they're going to roll it out for us on August 15th. And it almost feels like this Tiffany's announcement was like a forcing function for them to kind of speak out a little bit more on that. I'm not sure. But I found that interesting that this wasn't actually a direct partnership. It almost feels like something Tiffany sort of did off on their own. I don't know. Thoughts on the whole thing?
I mean, I feel like it's a nice way to bring to life what it means to own your IP of your NFT. Like where you can be like, oh, I don't have to get, like CryptoPunks doesn't have to be directly involved for me to get this pendant or make this thing with my NFT, my CryptoPunk. So I feel like it's a nice demonstration of how that can look. And I know people have done that with different stuff with Bored Apes, but So for me, I was like, oh, this is like really clicking in a way that I think is good for like consumers and people in the space to understand what it means, like how powerful it can be to own that IP. So that's cool. I don't know that I would buy one, but you know, experimentation is good. I don't know, Dina, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm sort of like, look, it's not for me. Like, I don't have a punk, but also I wouldn't like that, like that sort of jewelry. Like, it doesn't speak to me on a product level. Like, I don't think the jewelry with the punk and like having that around my, like, it's not for me. But I do think it's smart. And
man, if you were wearing that pendant, I would be like, what has happened?
Can you
like
imagine?
Something's gone horribly wrong.
But yeah, so for many reasons, just like not for me, but not a punk holder, and so maybe great for them. But yeah, I think like Natasha's saying, like I think it signals like some really interesting composability, and I think that that's a smart play. It's a good, it's an interesting expression for how brands can play. I think that like in execution, I don't know. I would have liked to see Tiffany like. It doesn't feel like the brand alignment between Punks and Tiffany's and like demographics and audiences feels a little bit mismatched to me, but maybe they were just going for like blue chip. This is the best of the best. But yeah,
well, I think Tiffany's probably is also like a lot of the newly minted millionaires in crypto who like may be proposing to somebody in the next decade or something.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
right.
You know, own a punk and let's start immersing them into our brand. So I think it's kind of an interesting play from that standpoint, and probably not the stupidest one. That,
I also think
Tiffany's
has made a concerted effort the last few years to try to rebrand as something a little cooler. Like they did this whole thing with Beyonce and Jay-Z and everybody was like, what? Like that's sort of interesting. And so I think that that's probably what they're trying to do. But to me, it's such a classic Upper East Side lady jewelry brand that it is fun. Like this combo is really funny. But I appreciate them trying to like attract a new audience with something like this.
Totally. And I'm sure they'll sell out, and I'm sure they'll make a ton of money. Yeah.
So here's a question. I was taking bets with some folks yesterday. How quickly do you think they'll sell out?
I think in the day. Yeah.
So some people were saying it'll take a day, like 8 hours. I was like, I'm with you, Natasha. I was like 20 minutes. Like there's only 250 of them.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
like
the supply is so limited.
Yeah.
If it was a 10,000 collection, I would be much more skeptical. But it's like 250.
Also,
I definitely think you'll get bites on that.
I sort of love 250. That makes me like it more. Like how limited and how expensive it is. I'm about a premium product like that. But so and it's good for them. Like to sell out immediately is going to be positive for them.
Yeah, and again, I think it's positive news. I just want to give a quick shout out to Balenciaga or Prada if they're listening. Just come to Boys Club. We'll hook you up.
We'll do this for you.
We'll do a deal with you.
Yes.
Main characters and zaddy holders. They get like the little fanny pack, Balenciaga fanny pack that says Boys Club. Can you imagine?
I would die.
I would die.
Yeah.
So I love the play generally.
To your point about the feel and the brand of Tiffany's, I'll be curious to see, and I don't think they've released anything about this, about like almost what I guess it's not really a mint experience, but they have the mint pass. See, I don't know all the details, but this is all happening tomorrow because I feel like there's something very deep in Tiffany's brand that's about like the unboxing and like the Tiffany box and it's blue and like, and if they did something cool, or if they like clearly really made a play around that component of this, that would feel like a really interesting way to like incorporate kind of the Tiffany brand to it. I don't know if they're thinking along those lines, but I think it could be funny, or it could be interesting. And then the funny thing I was going to say, again, in like funny tweet land that I've seen, somebody was like, your significant other brings you a Tiffany's box and it's a CryptoPunk, or like, like you open it up and inside is a CryptoPunk. And just like all the women out there who are about to be like very disappointed. Okay, I have one more hot take that I want to give on this topic. I actually really like this. I have to say, I think it's a cool move on both their parts. I think it's an interesting play for Tiffany's to your point, Natasha, kind of modernize. I think the pendants look kind of cool. Like I think I'm totally with you. The 250 supply feels right. I don't have a punk.
Okay. I was like, you should buy one.
I will not be buying one. I probably wouldn't. That also would not be where I'd want to spend 30 ETH, but I think it's cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting for punks because I think, and this will get me to my hot take, punks are trying to be the fine art, like luxury brand of NFTs. So yeah, their holder base is like, like this crypto bro, maybe ultra nerdy, a lot of them. But they are kind of like the original fine art piece of this world. And I think with Noah Davies being on board as their brand ambassador, like that all makes sense. So I think this collab makes sense. Where I start to get skeptical is actually in giving punks holders rights over the product.
Same.
And I think if you're a premium brand, why the F are you doing that?
So much money. The Gucci Apecorn story, maybe we could talk about that because I think there's a tie-in. But I think so do you want me to tease it or do you want to?
No, do it all.
So
Go all in.
Gucci announced that they're accepting Apecorn. That's basically it. So you can buy your Gucci bag with Apecorn. And I think the two stories, like it's an interesting trend that like the amount of money that those premium luxury brands invest in their brand, it's staggering, right? To create the aura around what Gucci is. The amount of money is just like beyond that they would put that on the line for Bored Ape is wild to me. And I think that like it's similar with the punk story because it's like punks like, okay, so there was, I don't know if you guys saw the Forever 21 Bored Ape line. Did you guys see this?
No. I missed this.
Okay.
No good.
So a couple weeks ago, there was a tweet that came out that was like, there was like shirts. Bored Apes holders had licensed the brand to Forever 21, and I want to say like Aeropostale, like there was like Old Navy, a couple others, and so there was these shirts online where it said like Bored Ape, whatever, Yacht Club. And
like the independent holder.
The independent
like a holder.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so for me, it's sort of similar where it's like, man, you give everyone the power. Like Bored Ape also has done a lot to like create this brand and that they're willing for it to be like the dilution that could come when anyone can sell to whomever, like that can happen really quick and can take the whole thing down. Like it just needs to go in like the wrong place like a couple times. And you're like, oh, that's like, there's just, I guess what my point is like, the protection around the brand, like whether it's Gucci or whether it's Bored Ape, like there's a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into it and a lot of money and like resources that are invested in that. And so when you let it loose, I just think it's a huge risk. I obviously see like the upside of it. And like in this Web3 world, like everything's decentralized and we all own, but like for these brand first projects, like it's really tricky. Something that we think a lot about at Boys Club as well.
Yeah.
Well, also like you're diluting the brand across for all holders.
For all holders.
Like as a holder, I'm like, oh, like that's representative of the value, like the value that I have and what's in my wallet is going to be fluctuate depending on how the collective community is, the decisions that they're making around their own independent IP.
And maybe that's the argument for why they'll stay protected because these individual holders have an incentive to like uphold the brand as well. But like, it just takes one nihilist or one person with a radically different view of what the brand should be. Like, I was joking about this with somebody, but I'm like it's that one CryptoPunk's toilet deal and the one CryptoPunk that's now like starring in a porno for this, like to really feel weird and to really like start to hurt this premium feel. And I like the CCO thing. I like the rights to holders thing. I think there are brands for which that's a real fit. I just happen to think that with CryptoPunks and what this Tiffany's thing is indicative of is what feels like their brand is. And it just feels like giving rights to holders is a little bit antithetical to that, in my opinion. And it would be better served by having like a really protective sort of visionary, making partnerships with brands like Tiffany's and having white glove service for the holders. So like Noah's there to service all 3,000, 5,000, whatever holders of CryptoPunks at any point. They can come talk to Noah, give their input, whatever. So they can be very involved in the brand's future without one renegade punk holder being able to kind of go and do some things that are really quote unquote off brand.
I think the counterpoint to that, like playing devil's advocate, they would say like, oh, like I saw this when I was looking at the Forever 21 thing. People are like, oh, well, it's for all those people are now walking around with Bored Ape billboards on. All of those shirts are distributing the brand.
Oh, Bored Ape makes sense to me. Bored
Right.
Ape's whole thing is renegade, middle finger. If Bored Ape's on a toilet, it doesn't hurt Bored Ape brand.
Right.
Their whole thing is like a bathroom, pixel board where you can draw your penises. Like that's the thing is, to me, it should be a case by case basis. Like I'm very supportive of these things for certain brands. And I think Bored Ape, that model totally works there. I just don't think that means the model works everywhere.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Were
look,
you
I'll probably
surprised-
end up eating these words, but
Were you surprised by the CryptoPunks IP announcement, or were you expecting that because of Bored Apes?
well, it happened so fast. It happened during, because they announced it when they first purchased Punks and Meebits, and it was during South by Southwest. So like there was a lot going on, and it feels like they announced the purchase and they pretty quickly followed it up with the rights. So like I didn't have time to kind of process all of that. I don't think at the time though I had as strong of an opinion. It's amazing how time passes in this space. Like even the 5 months it's been since then, I feel like I've developed more opinions about the space and just observing it more. So I think at the time I was probably a little bit more like, oh, you could go either way with this. I could make the argument, you know what I mean? And I feel a little bit stronger about it now because I feel a little bit just more clear on what I think about how these things should go. Again, I'll probably be wrong and Punks there'll be a toilet punk and the price will skyrocket by like Elon Musk will buy it and the price will pump by like 100 ETH because nothing makes sense in this world. But personally, this is my thought. I want to talk about music world. Two really, really interesting things I want to highlight and one that we maybe dive into a little bit more. So the first is Muse is releasing an NFT album. Essentially, they're releasing an NFT that the artwork is going to be like a sleeve of a vinyl record, for example. It's going to be like the album cover art. But this NFT will also unlock their whole album. So you can download a FLAC file, right? Like a high audio value file of the album. So this NFT, there's going to be 1,000 of them. I think the NFT will get you this album. We'll talk more about that. But the thing I want to highlight here that's really interesting about this is the governing body for like the UK charts recently made a change in which NFT albums like this will actually, the sales will count towards the charts. So these 1,000 albums that will get sold will count towards Muse's chart ranking. That feels like a big deal to me. We'll talk about more, but I'll add the second music announcement and we can talk about them maybe together. MTV has announced a metaverse performance category as part of the MTV Awards, I guess. And so there's going to now be a category where you can win for your metaverse performance. Both of these strike me as similar, like sort of incentivizing a Web3 behavior in a really big way in the mainstream. Would love to get y'all's thoughts on it.
Yeah, both feel significant to like signaling from the mainstream about wanting to, maybe it's like feeling it out and wanting to see what the response is, or maybe it's actually like moves in the direction of making this more a part of the music industry as a whole and not just like a niche part of music. The MTV one is interesting to me. I saw some of the people that they had, like, I think it was like Ariana Grande and BTS, and like those were the people who were like on the list of nominees, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And I'm like, cool. I would have loved to have some undiscovered in the mainstream, like music NFT people who are actually like, this is what they do. Like if you're going to have a category like this, like do a little bit of, legwork and bring some of those people in, even as nominees, is my take. I
think they were just doing it for, I think it was a hype cycle, because I looked at some of the comments on Twitter around what's going on in this MTV thing. And they basically just started a battle royale between BTS fans and Blackpink fans. Like it was basically just like, how do we pit these two K-pop crazy fandoms against one another? Like, and so I was looking on Twitter and I was like, okay, it's really, this is like,
that's what it's about.
That's what this is about. I mean, maybe not that's what this is about. That's what it's turned into. And so like, I can see, I'm sure MTV is clawing for relevancy wherever they can find it. And like, this is a way,
shots fired.
Like, I mean, the shots were fired, but I stand by that.
It's true.
I fully stand by that.
You're not wrong.
So, but I do think I think it's an interesting signal. I think it's an interesting step, whether they're doing it for hype or not. Like it still is a pretty big moment in, I think, in the music, like NFT metaverse landscape to have some validation there. So like, I'll take it. I think it's great and I'll take it. But like sort of looking under the hood of it, it's like, oh, okay. this might have been for for some other reasons.
Yeah. When I said it was the MTV, it's the VMAs. I don't know. I think I got the award wrong that this is for. Is this something that we sense is like an in perpetuity now thing? Because to me, then, while this may have the immediate result of this is like the skeuomorphic thing where it's like, we're not going to take a metaverse native like artist. We're just going to like be like, I don't know, these people performed digitally at one point. Like, let's give it to them. But in the long term, I think what it'll ultimately turn into is like genuine, it will encourage genuine innovation and excitement around.
I think so too.
Like virtual world performances,
I think so too.
if it does stick around, which I think is the plan. The other thing I want to say, I did an interview today with Herman Narula. It'll come out probably next week. Who is the founder of Improbable, which is the tech company powering the Other Side metaverse. And like, holy hell, this dude is so impressive. And what he's building is so cool. And the way he thinks about the metaverse is really cool. Like, his whole emphasis is not on gaming. Like, he's like, we already have 3D characters running around in games and like being able to talk to other people. Like, that's actually not a new thing. And yeah, okay, you know, cool if we can make it interoperable. He had some funny lines about like taking your like, you know, Grand Theft Auto gun and like bringing that to Harry Potter world and how we're a long ways away from that for like very good reasons, you know. Like, he's like, the school can't handle that or whatever. He was joking about it. But he was like, it should be more about extending real world experiences in really interesting ways. Like, we have these other worlds all the time. Like, sports is like another world in many ways. Like, we care about what happens on these sports fields. Like, it doesn't really matter. This isn't like real life in any sort of like life or death way, but we care about it. And so that's why their technology has really been centered around, how can I bring 4,500 people together in a virtual experience and make it feel really real? And you can hear that person from across the other side world shouting something. And they did a concert last year with Alexa, I think is a Korean pop star. And it was like apparently a really cool experience. You know, and the fans could go like jump up on Alexa and Alexa could like, you know, throw them off in the virtual world, but they could actually be talking to each other. And like, how do we just extend these exciting like sports and like celebrity experiences that create like a shared culture and like bring us together on that. So it got me thinking about the metaverse in sort of a new way. And I think part of why this MTV metaverse performance category gets me excited is because I see some really interesting progress happening on that side where, you know, he just kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, this is going to be kind of sick. And when VR gets that much better, I think it'll just expand the whole experience. Okay, I want to go deeper on this Muse album release and the news here. And I think you guys recently had Cooper Turley on the pod and are newly red-pilled into music NFT world. So I would really like to hear your take on it because I'm still wrapping my head around it, if I'm being totally honest.
Great.
So I'll just say, I'll give a little more details on the Muse album release. They are launching through a platform called Serenade, which is a Polygon-based platform. And Serenade is claiming, and I will say, like, myself and people I work with reached out kind of extensively to Serenade to try and get on a call with them before we did this podcast. And we kind of got the runaround. So Serenade, I want to talk to you. I want to understand this better. So I'm giving proper information to the people. But as it is, I just have to work off of what came out in press releases. But essentially they're claiming they've pioneered this like digital pressing concept, which is a way to like create this NFT music file in a way that's highly compatible with the way that UK charts already like count album sales. And so they very much geared this digital pressing product towards this announcement around, okay, now these NFTs can count as album sales. And so I think that concept is very interesting, but I don't understand it on a technologically deep enough level to feel like I really understand if this is something interesting and new or if it's not at all, you know, and if it's basically just they're trying to PR package this as something really cool. But nevertheless, I think this is an exciting kind of revelation, just that it'll take us back to the era of like, you bought a CD because you wanted to show off your CD, again, a little bit as a collectible, or like Taylor Swift was still selling CDs until like 2015 because her fans were so rabid. They were like, we want to support her to the max. And she's telling us to buy her CD at Target. So I'm going to Target at midnight to buy her CD, even though I really don't need to anymore because we all listen on Spotify. And a resurgence of that is, I think, very cool and very fun. But give me your like thoughts on this and then kind of why you're excited now about music NFTs.
Well, I mean, something that Cooper had said that has really stuck with me is that basically like owning a music NFT for an artist that you really like, or like an artist that you discovered. Like in high school, there was always that thing where, and like in college and stuff like that, where someone would get big. Like, this is a terrible example, but like the Lumineers, you know, there was always that dude who was like, well, I was listening to them when nobody was like, you know, like that guy. Or I'm sure I did it with like, I don't know, Imogen Heap or something, you know? And like you didn't have something to prove that was true, that like you did listen to them before they were big. Or I would have loved a track record of like, oh, I actually wasn't that early. Like I thought I was so on the cutting edge and like actually I was not. And like music NFTs for many reasons are amazing, but one of the things that stuck with me was like you have that representation in your wallet if you purchase one of an artist's music NFT to prove that you've supported them from the beginning, that you've been with them from the start, and have that like level of fandom with an artist. So that was something that has like stuck with me, and like there's so much opportunity for the artist in what's possible now with like with this technology, but from the consumer, I was like, oh, that's sort of interesting and something that I thought a lot about.
So I actually loved our conversation with Cooper, and he, just clearly is so passionate about it and like really knows his stuff inside and out. And so that was just like fun on its own. But one thing I sort of woke up the next day thinking about was that, so this use case around sort of collecting and collectors is really sort of where the conversation is centered in music NFTs, where you're buying the asset, and that's like a sort of badge of honor in many ways, where like, and using the proxy of like records or CDs or whatever it was. I woke up the next morning being like, man, I don't know if the total addressable market for the use case or for the behavior of collectors and collecting music is as big as like, I'm just like a listener. I just like listen. I'm not a collector, but I'm a listener. And I think I'd fall under that category. I'm not a collector, but I'm a listener. And I wonder like how, I'm just like wondering about the TAM of music NFTs with the use case of collecting. I think it's totally legitimate, but like that's like the one thing I sort of can't unlock is the buyer side of it.
Yep. I have a thought on this. And I will say this is actually sort of, I'm about to argue for the addressable market here, but with a caveat. But I have also been the person on the other side of this debate. Like I could argue both sides of it, is I guess what I'm saying. But when I think about, you know, I in high school was the opposite of that person. I was like, and I've never been like on the cutting edge of music, but in high school, at least privately, like a significant part of my self-identity was that like I basically exclusively listened to like classic rock, like 60s, 70s, like rock bands, you know? And that was like my private like rebellion against my peers who were like listening to whatever they thought was cool. And I'm like, oh, like I'm so misunderstood, but like I was like, but like better because I listened to like classic rock, right? Like, and I think I would have been interested in socially signaling that had there been a way to socially signal that, you know, other than, you know, whatever, talking about it, I guess. But, you know, and so to me, it's a question of will there be a way to show off your wallet like we all show off our social media profiles?
Right.
That's super commonplace and normalized in the behavior of like every day.
Yeah.
And, you know, one metric of that, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this. Like, do you think we'll have a point where dating apps, it's like, here's a link to my Instagram and then here's a link to my like wallet, you know, and it'll include all the receipts from the coffee shop that I go every morning. And like, you know, like it'll be just give you this really interesting picture of like basically where I spend my money, which will probably have terrible ramifications for society and mental health, but also is kind of interesting as a
but great for music
potential
NFTs.
future. but dope for music NFTs. Oh geez.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could totally see. I could see that. Definitely, someone is building right now that application where there's just like this seamless display of everything that we're owning digitally, right? Like it's not. And the person who figures out how to do that cross category, whether it's music or fashion or whatever, is gonna win. Maybe that's Instagram.
Yeah.
But I think that's definitely happening. That's definitely what people are thinking of. I think regardless, I think this news story is, again, it's a really interesting industry signal that I feel like is really promising. Now, I saw in the Muse press release that they're going to press 1,000 copies. That will make no impact on the charts.
On their charts.
Like even best case scenario.
So here's a question. Here's what I wanted to ask their team and that I have no clarity on: secondary sales.
Right.
Like if you secondary
yeah.
sell this, does that then go towards charts? And then that's interesting.
That's interesting.
But yes, of course. But I don't know, and I can't find it in the literature. And they're give me the runaround in terms of talking to me. So, we'll see. I'm totally with you. In this particular case, it doesn't mean anything. But again, looking ahead, the next couple of years, it's definitely just an additional incentive for artists to put out NFTs when they're putting out.
And the music industry will love it because there's no overhead costs on the printing. So like if this works,
the margins are great.
Yeah, you can guarantee that that's gonna get used.
Yep. MetaMask is the leading Web3 wallet to get you access to everything you need in Web3. If you're just getting started on your NFT journey, you need MetaMask. And if you need to fund your MetaMask account in order to buy that NFT that you've been eyeing, well, now you can do that directly through MetaMask. Just click the blue buy button on the home screen. Personally, I'm mad that I've spent extra gas fees transferring money from Coinbase to MetaMask in order to buy NFTs. I've been using MetaMask directly, and it is so much better. You can also buy stable coins and native tokens from Ethereum, Polygon, Avalanche, CeeLo, and others, and you can do it directly with your debit card, your credit card, through Apple Pay or Google Pay. And there is now an improved buying experience on MetaMask Mobile. You'll only see tokens that are in your region, so it's personalized to you, and you'll get real-time quotes, so you know you're always getting the best deal. If you haven't downloaded MetaMask yet, what are you waiting for? Go try it out. You can learn more about buying cryptocurrencies with MetaMask at metamask.io/buy-crypto.
CoinShift is a leading treasury management and infrastructure platform for DAOs and crypto businesses who need to manage their treasury operations. Every crypto org needs to manage their treasury, and CoinShift offers a simple, flexible, and efficient multi-chain treasury management platform built on top of the extremely secure Gnosis Safe. With CoinShift, your organization can go from primitive single-chain treasuries to expressive, flexible, multi-chain features such as global user management, global contracts, proposal management, and many other features that can be shared across an entire organization. CoinShift layers on powerful treasury management tools on top of the proven security of Gnosis Safe, allowing users to save time and reduce operational burdens and gas costs. CoinShift even has data tools like account reporting across the 7 chains on which it operates. Used by industry powerhouses such as Uniswap Grants, Balancer, Consensus, and Messari, CoinShift is speeding up the coordination and efficiency of the organizations that use it. In DeFi, you have to keep up with the frontier, and CoinShift makes that easy. So sign up at coinshift.xyz/bankless.
Some moves as we sort of talk here about the metaverse. I want to talk about other moves happening in metaverse world. I want to talk about Treeverse, but maybe where I'll start is there was this Vitalik tweet recently. I think it was like maybe a subtweet, like he was tweeting under something. And he was talking about Meta as in the company. And he was like, my critique is deeper than Metaverse Wikipedia will beat Metaverse Encyclopedia Britannica, meaning he's talking about decentralized metaverses. Like basically the decentralized metaverse will beat a centralized metaverse. It's that we don't really know the definition of the metaverse yet. It's far too early to know what people actually want. So anything Facebook creates now will misfire. So I'm no Facebook. I'm not like a Facebook bull here, but I actually don't know if I agree with this critique. And I wanted to know if you guys had any initial reactions to this Vitalik tweet, who I love to the ends of the earth. So I'm not criticizing him either.
I think what it's tough.
Go ahead.
I think what he's saying is like if you're too early, the first person's going to mess it up because you're going to design it wrong and you don't understand what user needs are. And like, that's ultimately like what he's sort of alluding to, right? Like that, I think I could see that, right? Like I can definitely see that, but I do think that there is like and I'm not a Facebook maxi, but I do think that there's obviously like an incredible network effect that can come from a product that's launched out of that company, that would maybe force all of our hands to like take their version of the metaverse, as gospel. So like, I think that there's definitely like, I get it, but I don't know. It may be underestimating the power of that reach of Facebook and Instagram and all the related channels and properties.
I think my feeling on it is like, I don't think the Facebook metaverse is going to win, and I feel stronger on that having talked to Herman Narula, but I'm also in my own bubble, right, of like decentralized maxis in a way that like the rest of the world very much is not. But the part of this tweet that I think I resonates for me is I do in general think that these decentralized metaverses that are really in many ways co-creating the metaverse with their users, there's like a really obvious reason to argue for that and to support that. I think probably fundamentally that's what Vitalik is getting at. So like that's lovely. On the other hand, I think back to the quote that may or may not be real, but of Ford saying if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And I think there's a very real dynamic of like people on the cutting edge building things that people don't know they want yet. And that being the thing. And that's what we're doing in Web3. Like so many of the builders in Web3 are building things that the rest of the world is not telling us they want. In fact, they're yelling quite loudly that they hate us, but we kind of know over time they'll become adopters. So I just felt like that it's not necessarily true that just because we don't know what users want yet, you can't build something that's really successful.
I mean, I think my take was like when I think about Meta, they have built their entire world off advertisers. Like that's the king of Meta. And what I love and like what I see in Web3 and what I think what we all think the opportunity is that like profitability and ownership, like user ownership, can work hand in hand. And like if those things can work hand in hand, like how powerful is the future going to be? Like if incentives are aligned and everybody's winning because these things are living together, and your best interest as an owner in this thing is that it's as profitable and as successful as it can be. I think that's the bet that we all collectively are making on Web3 being the future. But that is still very much being designed for and like not actually real yet. Like there's some use cases of that, but like it's not real across the board. And my feeling is if we win at that, Meta will probably not win because advertisers will lose in that scenario. And if we don't win at that, then Meta will definitely win because they're designing for like the world that we're already living in, but with some different like names to it, basically. So
it's a really good point.
I'm like, I don't know that that's what this tweet is about, but as I was thinking about like, what do I actually think about Meta's approach? I'm like, oh, if they win, we probably all lose. Like the way the vision of what we see.
Definitely. So no, I think that's a really good point to kind of center it on the advertiser model. And I actually talked about that with Herman today a little bit, and he was pretty bullish on the idea that like we wouldn't need advertisers in the same way, which we shouldn't, right? Fundamentally, you can sell NFTs now, like, right? And like that's at the center of the metaverse. You're not required to bring on advertisers as your funding source.
I actually have a hot take on this.
At all in the same way.
We're sort of in Boys Club, we're designing what like our next NFT moment is, and we're thinking about like decentralized media. We're thinking about what like Web3 native media is and how it's defined. And I think to your point where it's like we don't need advertisers, we can buy NFTs. Yes, totally true. And I think we've obviously in this past bull run have seen a ton of power in that, and just in the power and rise of digital assets generally. I do think that putting the burden of like paying for access, paying for content, paying for experiences online, putting that burden on the consumer to pay for, I think we're overestimating what people will be willing to pay for in a Web2 environment. Like when for the last 5-10 years, we've all had the entire internet that at the tip of our fingers, basically for free. And so I think like when we start gating things, we're going to learn really quickly, like that friction will mean less people involved and like less reach.
Spotify versus
and so NFTs. As we're planning sort of our next NFT thing, like that's coming up for us because it's like we're thinking about sort of content and gating content, and it's like, man, is gating content or gating an experience or gating an access to something like by making consumers pay for it, whereas previously advertisers would have foot the bill? Is that like innovation? I don't know.
I think that's a great point, and it's going to be a blend, right? Like when I was younger, I had less disposable income and I couldn't pay for paywalled good news content, and I got the free stuff and that was fine. And now I probably pay for like 10 Substackers, right? Because I really value what they're having to say. And I'm in a fortunate enough position to be able to pay the $5 or $8 a month or whatever to get their content specifically. And so I think the key is the optionality. And I think you're right. Like we absolutely need to have a world where there's like awesome free content that's then therefore subsidized by advertisers.
Yeah.
But I also think the advertiser like only model, which has sort of been the model for so long, also wasn't working well. And so there is an innovation there, and that's like wonderful. But I think, Natasha, you were saying that the thing you were kind of centering on the on if it stays centered on the advertisers, that's when we're screwed. And I think one reason I'm optimistic for the metaverse is like the network effects that currently exist in these social media platforms like make it very hard to change user behavior. Like I love what Lens Protocol is doing and the goal for decentralized social media. And in theory, you should see flocks of people leaving traditional social media for that for Web3 social media because they can get more value out of it. But that value is going to have to be a lot to really get people to change consumer behavior from what they're currently doing. Whereas the metaverse is a new open landscape that if out the gate they're presented with two choices, one which clearly accrues more value to them and one which clearly accrues more value to the platform, it feels logical that they'll go with the one that accrues more value to them, and that it'll win simply because consumers are going to be given that choice out the gate, which they were not given in social media land. Like we were not given a choice in the beginning, like whether we wanted to do Twitter or some like open protocol where like we could own our tweets. That was never presented. So I'm optimistic that these options are going to present themselves in relative parallel in the metaverse, and consumers will have a real choice there.
Can I ask you what the metaverse is? Like, how are we defining this?
Ooh.
Is it just like where there's digital assets, like where I happen? Because do I need a VR head? Am I like? I'm just curious. Like, how?
No. Here are the two definitions that I have come across that I think are the most interesting. So, like, the loosest definition is just like when you're spending time in the digital world, and it's like we've all been in the metaverse the last 10 years, and like sure, or the amount of time we spend on social media or in Zoom rooms, right? Like is arguably the metaverse and whatever.
We're in the metaverse right now.
Yeah, exactly. Or in games, that's the metaverse. The two things that I think were really interesting. One was Janine I forgot her last name. She is the CEO of EveryRealm, which is a metaverse investment company that is spun off of from other company that you would know the name of, but I can't remember the name of it right now. So that's going great. And she was like, it's the essentially interactivity. Like when I go on Free People's website to shop, if my best friend is also on Free People's website to shop, I don't know that. And that really the metaverse is when it stops being this sort of like one-way street of like me bumping into just like a wall. And when I know that my friends are there and I can maybe even interact with them while I shop online. And that was like a really cool definition in my opinion of like when we hit there, it's obviously not like the definition. And then the other one was, the other one was this Herman Narula one, which is which is not like a hard and fast destination to get to, but like extending human experiences into when like it's commonplace to go to a metaverse concert and you and all your friends can gather there. And it's like, it's not about the gaming, it's about the extending human experiences into the digital world. So that one's a little bit vaguer. He maybe would push back and have some stronger definition if you pushed him point blank. But both of those felt like interesting definitions to me, or interesting ways to think about it.
I mean, if the metaverse were you shopping with your friends online, it would save Dina and I
so much time,
so many
hours of sending each other links back and forth, like just the amount of time wasted. Yeah, that would be great.
Marco Polo's trying on new things.
Let's start there.
Just a lot of different platforms.
Metaverse maxis. That's we've now become Metaverse with one phrase. Boys Club is going all in on the metaverse.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I guess speaking of the metaverse, I wanted to talk about this project Treeverse that's been on my radar for a long, long time, but I've never really talked about it. And of course, not financial advice. I don't own a damn thing in this project. I say this all the time. People who listen to this show must be so confused by my job. They're like, all you do is talk about projects that you don't own. I'm like, I know, but I don't have conflicts of interest. So this is the beautiful thing. So Treeverse is a project. Have you guys followed it at all? Do you know much about this?
Top level. Also, we're not gamers, so you're really on your own here. Like,
no, nor am I, which again, anybody who listens to this show will know, because I say it all the time and I just like apologize profusely that anybody is having to put up with me talk about this stuff. But I'm trying to learn, because it's obviously so central to this space. And so much of like the market decisions are like, demand is basically driven by 21-year-old gamers. So I'm like, that they've got the best shot at making the most money in this space up to this point. So Loopify, this is a Loopify project. And when some people that I respect are in this project, which is why I've been interested in it. It's over a year old, I think, at this point. Like, I feel like Loopify started tweeting about this last year. And more recently, he released like a trailer of the world. And so that's why I'm bringing it up now, is there's sort of been like a latest development in it. But from what I understand, so he starts tweeting about this last year, and it's initially just like a pixelated tree is where it starts, and people know that there's going to be like a game associated with it. He follows that up with these founder plots of land. From there, you get these avatars. And at every stage, it feels like he's almost like up to the ante in terms of what this game is going to be and how he's thinking about it. So it's really evolved into this like full MMORPG. Do you know what that stands for, ladies?
Massive
like a group gaming.
I do know, but
it's excellent.
Group games.
Massively multiplayer online role play game.
Nice.
Role play game. Okay.
That's the RPG piece of this. And so, like, it's got sort of an anime vibe, it feels like, from the latest like visuals that I was able to see. So it feels like it's tapping into like a number of zeitgeists here. And again, no incredible take here, but Loopify was like, I think people are going to really start to appreciate what we're building. He tweeted that recently. So I'm just trying to put more of a spotlight on this for folks who are into gaming. I think Loopify, he's not doxed, which I'm skeptical of. So like, I always want to caveat things with that, but like, has been in the space for a long time, been working on this project alone for a long time. So like, I'm like, there's a commitment to this project that feels very genuine. Much of his team is doxed, like their pictures are on the website and things. So it's like, not like the whole team. I forgot what the end to that sentence was going to be.
Well, something that I as sort of tying in between this. So I saw this Twitter thread on this tree land. What's it called? Treeverse. Okay. And sort of interesting, tying back to what you were saying about like the metaverse and the interview that you had today about like performances. And so I was like reading this, and I remember like Fortnite. I'm not a gamer. I know we've already said that, but I'm caveating again. Fortnite like does like concerts, like in their game.
Travis
Scott. And like the Marshmello, what's the Marshmello guys? Anyway, those DJs. And it's sort of interesting, tying back to what you were saying around like that type of experience. Those are sort of like markers of this thing becoming more and more real, or more and more important to people, is like pulling in stuff from the real world and artists from the real world and putting them into this game and this world. And then like also so much of what I think when I've heard people talk about gaming, it's like the lore of the game is so important.
That's what the end of my sentence was going to be.
Oh, there it is.
It was this emphasis on story building. Finish your thought, so finish.
Anyway, it's just like interesting how like that how much like that is so important to people who are really into games, which feels sort of counterintuitive to then Travis Scott coming and like performing in that world. Cause I'm like, what? But like, and I was like, I really don't get this. Like, this isn't for me at all, like this type of world. But then I think of like Game of Thrones. And when everybody was into Game of Thrones, we've talked about this. But like, do you remember when like Sansa Stark like goes into...
I haven't watched it, so don't spoil anything. I am planning on it.
What? No, that's not...
You've got to be able to do it.
No, I don't have to be able to do it, but like you're
Okay,
past.
do it. I know.
Past the window.
You're not wrong. I just.
This isn't like
fine,
that great
do
of a
it.
point either to spoil. Anyway, there's
Okay.
like this one like daughter who goes to this world and she is training or something. I can't really remember the storyline, but she's trying on different people's faces and becoming them, and like becomes like a sorcerer, I think, or something, or like becomes like a fighter and all this stuff. And like I think that's what like people feel like games do for them. Like they get to become whoever it is that this game.
Yeah.
And that's why the story of it is so important, because they have to be like really sold into the idea and feel like they know the character that they are. And so I guess that's why it's important, but that feels really counterintuitive to like Travis Scott coming in, because I'm like, those worlds are not the same.
Because you're saying it's kind of blowing up the story. Well,
yeah,
I think there's ways
to
to blend them, but let me take these in two parts. So on the story building piece, that was going to be the end of that sentence. Something along the lines of just that is my sense of part of the strong case here for Treeverse is the emphasis on lore and the emphasis on the story building that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make a maybe partly separate point about Travis Scott, because again, you can tell this Herman conversation I had earlier today really stuck with me, because
You're
I'm just
fully juiced.
reiterating
everything. You're a huge fan.
Yeah, and everything that
I can't wait to listen.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm hoping that's the result of this. I'm hoping people aren't like, oh, I've now heard every point Herman has to make, because Carly just reiterated them all. So I'm going to skip that episode because she talked about it too much. Hopefully this gets you just more enthusiastic to hear him say it, because he's even better at saying it than I am. But, his point was, I guess, for the Travis Scott Fortnite concert, they had like millions of people, I think, who tuned into that, but they were in rooms of 100 people. Because they couldn't actually service having thousands of people there at once, because that's very technically challenging and complicated. And that's it's one of the big differentiators for Improbable and what they're building, is trying to create these experiences so you genuinely feel like you're in a stadium with thousands of other people,
cool.
like you would be for the concert, as opposed to like, it's me and 100 people, so you're sharing that experience with everyone. So anyway, that's just something I found fascinating. Any thoughts you have, Dina, on Loopify?
I mean,
which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly, or
the only take that I have was like, it feels like I was reading their like rollout timeline and all the things that they've shipped, and they've shipped a lot, and I feel like that's like what all these other NFT games like are trying to do, and they're actually executing. So I know nothing about games, I know nothing about them, but like I see a lot. I like casually encounter a lot of like, this is the next like gaming NFT thing, and like people go crazy for it and buy a bunch of stuff, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So I think the only thing I'd say is that like, it's really nice to see a lot of shipping consistently happen over a long period of time. And yeah, I just love to see that generally for the industry, because I feel like that's an important counter to a lot of the skepticism that like regular consumers bring into how they're thinking about the NFT space. Is like, it's just vaporware and rugs, but like they're shipping. It's amazing.
Yep, absolutely. And I agree. That's why I think Loopify not being doxxed, I'm like, okay, but you have a really interesting track record here. Like, be aware of it, but like the track record is not what you usually see in a rug puller. You know what I mean? Like a year dedicated to building this and shipping a lot and making real improvements is not like your typical rug puller behavior. Okay, final two topics. Solana, ETH, NFTs now on Magic Eden. I had one particular thing I wanted to call out about this, and then maybe we just wrap with some just fun takes on the really abysmal press coverage of crypto. Not as in the coverage is bad, it is, but like it's actually bad journalism is the coverage.
Yes.
So real quick here, I don't know how much crossed y'all's radar about this Magic Eden announcement. They will now be accepting ETH NFTs on their platform as well. But I'll get your quick taste and then share mine.
I mean, we're just living in a multi-chain world is how
I love a multi-chain world.
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to tell you why I'm going to fight this. So regular listeners of this podcast, again, this is another thing they're probably sick of hearing me talk about. I don't know. I think that one of, God, and Lord knows the everything we saw this week backs this up. One of the riskiest like points of failure in a system is a bridge, is when you're trying to bridge between these chains. And so for me, what Ethereum has going for it is tremendous network effects and security. What it doesn't have going for it is scalability. But I'm quite bullish on what's happening in the layer 2 ecosystem and sharding and the kind of advancements that are going to be made on the technical side, that I think Ethereum can very much overcome the scalability problem. So the question is like either which comes first, or maybe they all come and it's fine, but like ETH solving their problem with scale, or really secure bridges being built that allow for like crossing chains really easily. And I'm not sure I'm persuaded that like the bridging tech is going to be solved before the ETH scaling tech is. And then once you have enough network effects somewhere, like why would you launch a project somewhere else?
Yeah, I have to recuse myself from this conversation because of my day job. But yeah, I think lots of hot takes in there. But yeah, I need to be a little bit careful.
I just think for the world that we're living in and the world that I'm living in, or in Boys Club, where we're just trying to get more people interested and excited about what's happening here and seeing what the opportunity for them is in it. Like, it's really hard to like have these siloed chains where things are happening and interesting projects are happening, like, and it just makes it really difficult for people to engage. And so there's like security risk, and maybe it's not as sexy, but like something about, I'm just constantly thinking about the ease for consumers and the ease for mass adoption for people to really be able to like understand this ecosystem better. And so the more that like that can happen and it's easier for people, like, it's exciting to me. But you're totally right that like it presents a bunch of issues, because if a ton of people get in and excited about it and it's like not a secure environment, then the risk of that is even higher than not being able to understand or get into it.
Yep. What I thought was interesting about this Magic Eden announcement in there, and this was coming from NFT Statistics, Punk9059, he's been tweeting about this a bunch, but he tweeted this specifically. They called out in their announcement that there'd be no frozen stolen assets. And this is an issue that I had really not been tracking very fully. And I talked to Punk9059 earlier today. We should say he has been announced as the new like head of research for Proof. So that's a cool announcement in the world of NFT land. But he really kind of opened my eyes about this, which is this problem of OpenSea freezing assets that have been flagged as stolen, but they get frozen by the time some innocent buyer has bought them. And now this innocent buyer has invested, in some cases, like a lot of personal funding or something into an asset that they're now not allowed to resell, and they did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And is it really even solving the problem? No, it's not at all solving the problem. So apparently OpenSea's like line on this, so they've said very, very little, is that they're legally required to do this. I haven't talked to anybody at OpenSea. I actually will probably try and reach out to them because I'd be curious, but this all just kind of crossed my desk, metaphorically speaking, earlier today. But NFT statistics saying like, I've talked to lawyers about this, and like I have not gotten a good explanation as to why this would be legally required at all. You now have Magic Eden coming out saying they're not going to do it. So it seems odd that it's like a legal mandate. And that this is, there are people who are really kind of suffering under this. And half the time the thief who sells it is the one who flags it as stolen anyway. And like, it's strange. So I don't know if you guys have any takes on this, but that was something that jumped out to me about the Magic Eden announcement.
I mean, I think just generally like competition in any marketplace landscape is healthy. So I think great. It's good to see like other players rise and get traction and experiment and pull in different currencies or whatever it is, because I think that, market dominance, it never feels healthy for any industry. So I think I'm bullish generally on the trajectory.
Love it. I'm 100% with you there. Okay, fun stuff. Couple bad crypto takes. I mean, Wall Street Journal did a whole article about DeFi and basically used Celsius as the poster child. And you're like literally just sitting there, your heart's just like dying. You're like, how? You're the Wall Street Journal.
Literally
like,
how?
How do you have a take this bad?
Mm-hmm.
It's
no good.
It's really crazy to me that the narrative hasn't shifted to like just this, like the transparency piece alone that DeFi gives, that hasn't like become a thread through to interrogate TradFi, and that sort of leveraged from the media to be like, let's use this like sort of emerging thing that now is possible with this other technology, and like use that as sort of like a mirror, or like a lens to look at what's happening in TradFi, is like just assign that to a writer. Like, let's just like get that story like starting to go, because that's the narrative that like is really interesting and that we should like all be really curious about. And I just like I can't understand why that's not the dominant story, and why it's this.
It's so baffling, like taking a TradFi company that just happens to deal in crypto assets as opposed to equities, and then being like, see, this is why this new system they're proposing doesn't work. It's like, no, this is exactly why the old system doesn't work.
The take was,
like, so bad. The other one was Bloomberg was like indiscriminately calling out various celebrities, and like, but I say indiscriminately because it's like people like Reese Witherspoon, who I think have been really savvy about how they've entered the space. She's not launched her own NFT or coin or anything. Like, she and her team have really learned. They like were supportive of World of Women, and like, you had Bloomberg like calling her out for that. And I'm like, it's not like World of Women like stole from investors, or it was like it dropped 30% in value. It's like, okay, like you're gonna bash. It's the second inning of a 9-inning game, and you're like dancing on a grave. Like, that's like a weird flex.
Well, also it's like this art, like, many of these things are like investments that people have made. And like, this article, you would never write an article where you had these images with like their traditional investments and how they're doing. Correct. Like, it's an insane thing to be doing. And like, I don't understand how this got greenlit as a story that anybody cares about. Like, it's insane.
But I'm sure. But think about how many people care about celebrities, and also
such easy targets.
Care about seeing celebrities fall, and then hate crypto. And it's like because the difference would be most of these people aren't like necessarily pumping up their stock portfolio, or like that was the thing. Like, I get it. These celebrities were actively, vocally using their platforms to talk about these either projects or coins or crypto in general, and blah blah blah. So like. But again, just the lack of journalistic integrity to like this like pre-written narrative, because you're like, people hate crypto, like let's bash this, without actually providing information or any sort of healthy caveats, or like distinguishing between maybe people who really did kind of enter it sleazily and just for money and pumped bags that were bad, versus people who like really authentically entered it and are doing a lot of good, like just completely indiscriminate across the board.
We got like, Boys Club got caught up in like a little sort of, there was a minute there where everyone was trying to write a story about like women's crypto or Web3 projects, and they were not generous, and they were not all, I mean, not everyone, but like there was definitely a take that was happening that was around sort of women in Web3 and it being sort of this predatory like thing. And that is what it is. I'm not really commenting on that at all. But one thing that did consistently came up actually in an article about Boys Club was sort of making references to MLM, to that sort of like
multi-level marketing
schemes. Yeah. And what really irritated me about that being used in the context of Boys Club was, we have never charged to anyone a single cent to be a part of Boys Club, like never, not even a single cent. And that it's just like the media and these journalists like sort of have the story that they're looking to write, and they're just looking for evidence of it. And like, it just so happens to be that the sort of narrative is around this take right now.
Facts be damned. Facts that you've never charged anybody to join be damned.
And it's just like, it just feels really, I don't know, like, and then at the same time, like, we know for a fact that like all of these holding companies that like own these outlets are all like, wait, what's our crypto play? Like, what's our Web3 play? And like, they're all doing that. And it's just like, it's so weird to me.
Oh, I love that take so much. So I've been like, people can tune out of this podcast by this point if they're about to be bored with my like slightly adjacent to Web3 take. But I'm going to say this anyways. I've been like very interested in how do you create like the Daily Show with Jon Stewart model for to talk about like tech and business and Web3 and Jon Stewart being sort of different to me than any of the other voices that have kind of emerged in late night or anything else. And the way he kind of pointed out hypocrisy so well. Dina, was I saying this to you? Did I give you this like, specific example? Did I give you the like specific Al-Walid Bentaleb? Okay. So like, this is like perfect to what Dina just said. And I'll try and make this quick because we are running a little over time. But essentially the first episode of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart that I ever watched was in like 2009, and they were trying to figure out what to do with like the 9/11 site. You know, they hadn't actually done anything where the Twin Towers were, and there was some group that was trying to fund a mosque there, and the right was freaking out like you can't put a mosque. So they were calling it like the terror mosque, and you can't put it where 9/11 site was. And Fox News was doing a whole thing about the terror mosque and like follow the money, and the money leads you to this big bad Saudi guy who's funding this Freedom Foundation and whatever. Lo and behold, that bad Saudi guy is Al-Walid Bentaleb, who is business partners with Rupert Murdoch and part owner of News Corp and Fox News. And so Jon, of course, does this whole like incredible thing of like, are they evil or are they stupid? Like do they literally not know that the bad guy they're talking about is like co-owner of like their company, or are they just like evil and they're like intentionally like eliminating that information from the discourse or whatever? But like I almost feel like we need to do that for this of like, does the writer not know that their own company is like, talking to World of Women? Because I'm not saying this, actually, I'm not saying Bloomberg is actually talking to World of Women. I have no idea, but you get my, like, or are they just trying to, like, is there an evilness to just trying to like get clicks independent of truth, independent of anything else? Yeah. Oh, I want to do this now because that's such a funny, ridiculous
You got to do it.
scenario.
You got to do it. I would tune in. I'd tune in.
Okay. Deeply considering this. Well, that's our show. This was a blast. Thank you guys for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
And
anytime.
This was the perfect. I love having you guys on to like, again, the brand, like just some of the most amazing brand builders I know in the space. Like getting to chime in on what some of these brands are doing is a treat. So thank you both so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.